Welcome to GAEL Unscripted, where leadership meets learning and real conversations drive real impact. I'm Ben Wiggins, Executive Director of GAEL. Join us as we go beyond the headlines with Georgia's top education leaders. Let's elevate the conversation. Good day, GAEL members, and welcome to this week's exciting episode of GAEL Unscripted. Today we have two very special guests from CENTEGIX. We've got Mary Ford and Jay Floyd. So why don't we just take a minute, Mary, and introduce yourself to our listeners.
Thank you so much, Ben. The last time we were together, we were on a webinar on some of these topics. So I so appreciate being able to be here in person with you today. That's
thank
fantastic.
You so much for coming.
Yeah. So I lead marketing and communications for CENTEGIX. And our team supports so many of the conferences, especially those that happen across the state of Georgia. And I've been with CENTEGIX for about 6 years. And the thing about being part of this team that is just so powerful is those times when, in unexpected ways, somebody will tell me, we have CENTEGIX and our teachers love it. And I'll just share one example with you. I was at a neighborhood gathering event last night, and somebody said something about Alyssa's Law, and of course my ears perked right up, and I inserted myself into that conversation. And it was a teacher, actually someone from Cobb County. He said, our teachers love this. And it's those moments like that make all of our hard work really, really pay off. So thanks for having us out this morning.
Oh, thank you, Mary. Jay?
Ben, thanks for having us. Good to be in Athens. I'm Jay Floyd, former superintendent in Georgia, and I retired 3 years ago from being a superintendent, and then I retired on June the 30th, and July 1st I started with CENTEGIX, so it'd be 3 years. And so I work with strategic accounts and primarily in Georgia, but as many of us in CENTEGIX, it's wherever is needed, and a lot of times that's kind of what I do. My best thing that as far as CENTEGIX is concerned, is I like working with the school districts on best practices and the use of CrisisAlert and training their teachers, and because we want them to have success, and so I think that's very important. So that's primarily what I do with our accounts.
That's awesome. And Mary, you mentioned the webinar that we had back in the summer, early June. We were so appreciative that y'all came up with that idea, and we got some help from our colleagues at Page and GSBA and GSSA, and we had well over 470 registered participants on that webinar. Almost every school district in the state of Georgia was represented. And a lot of those registrations, they would have a team of anywhere from 4 or 5, 10 people sitting around a table watching that. So that was very good. We collected a ton of questions that the listeners had, some very, very good questions. And we distributed those to Chris Irwin, the House Education Chair, to Linda Creeblay with GEMA, and Matt Cordoza of DOE, and they worked really hard to compile those answers and so that we could get those out to our members. So thank you again for doing that. I know that was very, very informative. So talk to us. You brought up Alyssa's Law. Talk to us about what that means as far as the significance of CENTEGIX for those that are already CENTEGIX customers. And maybe there's someone out there listening and watching, one of our GAEL members that are not currently a CENTEGIX customer. How could that benefit them and take care of that requirement?
Sure. Ben, maybe I'll first give a couple of sentences about background about Alyssa's Law. So after the tragic school shooting in Parkland, Florida on Valentine's Day in 2018, one of the victims' mothers, Lori Aladef, began a movement called Alyssa's Law because Lori understood that if help had gotten to her daughter faster in that situation, her daughter may be alive today. So the concept of a panic button, connecting with local responders, and giving them information about exactly where help is needed, she knew how important that was. It was very personal to her. So over the past several years, Alyssa's Law has now been passed in 10 states across the country, and almost 20 states have some form of Alyssa's Law under consideration.
Wow.
And something that is interesting about CENTEGIX background is that the concept for our Crisis Alert product really came out of our founders listening to what school educators were saying that they needed to help make schools a safer place and to handle tragic situations like that. So that's really, those two things really kind of come together and are a part of how CENTEGIX got started.
Yeah.
So now, as we have continued to support school districts across Georgia and nationwide, we are protecting over 90% of the public K-12 schools in the state. And for all of our customers on Crisis Alert, they are already in compliance with Alyssa's Law. So having the mobile panic button and the ability to connect and deliver that information, who needs help and exactly where they're located, directly to local law enforcement.
Yeah.
And earlier this summer, we provided a letter that went out by email, and I keep saying Jay Floyd's the man if anybody needs that letter.
That's what I hear.
That documents how CENTEGIX helps districts comply. And there's a piece of the legislation that specifically says that anybody who already had a solution in place didn't need to do anything different, right? Like they were already in compliance.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Jay, you mentioned that part of your job is working with the compliance for the school districts. And I know CENTEGIX has evolved so much in the last few years. When I was at Oconee County High School as a principal, to where it's at now, I mean, there's a lot of new features. The testing feature was one that we were so excited when it came out. But anyway, talk about some of those new things that have come about with CENTEGIX.
The training mode is a big part of Crisis Alert, and you know because you're a high school principal and you kind of understand this, but the principal's the CEO of the building, and it kind of goes as the principal goes, what the expectations are from the principal. And so, as far as CENTEGIX is concerned, we can't keep people from doing crazy things, but one of the things that we can do is we can give technology and equipment to help teachers keep themselves alive and keep their kids alive. And so that training mode and working directly with administrators and their responders on a regular basis is one of the most important keys to the product. And so part of my responsibility is, I kind of feel like if they're having success and they're using it on a regular basis, as far as their staff alerts are concerned, when they do have a campus-wide alert, which is directly a part of House Bill 268, the campus-wide alert, then they're more prepared, and with their responders, they're more prepared as far as the campus is concerned. I know you know this, Ben, but in all school shootings, the history of school shootings, anybody that was behind a locked door, no one was injured, and so that's what Crisis Alert does. Is it helps to get people in a locked situation for a campus wide event as soon as possible, but at the same time, every second matters, and so those responders are on their way and they're getting there as quick as they can to provide help. And so that's a big part of Alyssa's Law, is being able to get them there as quick as possible. But also the second component is having the mapping solution to be able to show responders either on their desktop or on their iPhone, exactly where the alert is located. That's a big part of the bill, and it doesn't matter if it's on different floors, different levels. You have to have the ability to be able to locate, and so that's a big part of the bill. Yeah. Now we're going to talk about a little bit later on our blueprint mapping, and so I'd like to get into that too, how they can be compliant and how they can use our solution to meet that part of the bill.
That's awesome. Well, let's go ahead and talk about the mapping, because that was one of the big questions we got from some of our listeners and GAEL members leading up to the webinar that you all hosted in June, was making sure with the new requirements on House Bill 268 of all the things that now have to be included on that mapping, everything from AED machines to exits. And so that was one of the questions that people had was, if we have CENTEGIX, do we already have that capability? Is that something that we have to do as a district, or is that something that CENTEGIX does? And I think they were very relieved and excited to find out that they could do it themselves, or you all would help them go through training to do that. So maybe talk about that mapping and a little bit more.
Yeah, out of the you said 470 registered. I think I had 470 phone calls. But anyway, as far as the mapping goes, for the districts, every person that has crisis alert, they also have the blueprint mapping capability at no additional charge. And so the biggest thing is that they are set up, and as far as, administrative wise, they know exactly who's operating their maps. So the first thing I do is I ask them to determine who are going to be your blueprint mapping administrators. And they can do that by sending that name and email address to support@centegix.com, and they will be signed up as a administrator for blueprint mapping. So that's the first thing that they need to do. Mm-hmm. The next thing that they need to do is determine, if they need to be trained. If our immediate contact at the district has been trained, then of course they can retrain, and they can train the other staff members that have admin access. But if they need training, we can also do that by just sending a message to support@centegix.com, and they can do online training with them to show them how to tag their assets, because that is a big part of the bill as well, is that you tag your assets. And when I say assets, I'm talking about your AEDs, your fire extinguishers, your cameras, all of those things that are important in an emergency, so everybody knows where those are located. And I like to tell the districts, you need to look at it like, I'm somebody coming to your school, and I have never been to your school before, but what information do I need on that map so that I can see what I'm doing and where I'm going? And so that's the most important thing. And one of the best practices for districts is that they have a plan for training new employees, and that includes new responders. And that includes new people at the school level that are working with the admin panel. So that's one of the best practices, that they provide a way to train. From being in education, being a superintendent, you have mandated reporter training that you have to have. So I look at it like CENTEGIX is just as important. They should have some type of module where they train new employees, and so that's a big part of it.
That's right. Well, Mary, we've talked a lot about the safety component, which is obviously on the forefront of everyone's minds. But what I'm still reminded of is, in my experience as a principal and superintendent, instead, I think of all the benefits we were able to use CENTEGIX for with health-related issues. I mean, we had a custodian one time that was in a closet after school hours and had a seizure. But still was able to push the CENTEGIX button. And without that button, I don't know how long that custodian would have stayed in there. There was still an administrator on campus. The SRO was still on campus, able to find. We had a teacher one time walking in the parking lot and had a health-related episode coming in, and one of her colleagues was able to quickly push the button. So talk just a little bit about those advantages for CENTEGIX beyond just the unthinkable that CENTEGIX prepares us for.
Sure, and thank you for sharing some of those stories. I trust that all of those individuals are well and thriving today.
They are.
So that's good to hear.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Thank you for bringing up the point about everyday use of the badge, because that is literally what we do find. We recently published our school safety trends report, and it's a summary of the highlights from all of the usage from last year. And we found that there were over 265,000 crisis alert alerts that were initiated. So that's a lot of usage. And it tells us some interesting things. One point is that for last school year, about 60% of the alerts were outside the classroom. So really having campus-wide coverage and being able to use your badge and call for help anywhere is important. There is a healthy percentage of the alerts that are related to medical situations. And some of the most powerful stories that we get from customers are similar to the ones that you just shared, where they can't wait to tell us how we help them
Yeah.
save someone's life, because they knew that help was needed. Like,
That's
everybody knew immediately, and they knew where to go. And to the point of why mapping is so important, they knew where the nearby assets were to help
Yeah.
out in that situation.
That's right.
So we find that really it's about, on average, once a week. From if you just do the big averages, about once a week, a school is needing to use Crisis Alert.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, talk to us a little bit about how districts, or what they can do next with their CENTEGIX solutions.
Well, the best thing to do is preparing for the school year, just like you would with anything else. And we have a 2025-26, FY26 for the school system, a start guide for the school year. And so they can look that up at CENTEGIX.com, or they can request that. And so it went out to all of our customers as well. So somebody should have a copy that went at the district. So that went out. But, they need to follow that startup guide to start school, to make sure that they have prepared for time for badge training mode, that they prepared time for testing before school starts. So there's several things that they do need to have a checklist that they follow through with in preparation for starting school. And that includes having a plan for new teachers and new employees. But that also includes new administrators. I mean, there's a lot of turnover. Having a specific plan to train those responders, because you don't want the information to get lost, as you move through. Yeah. And so it's important that they do that. It's important that they have people in place that are managing their maps. One thing that's great about blueprint mapping with CENTEGIX is that it's a live map and it's real-time map, and the district has the ability to make changes and edit those maps without sending it to us for approval, or without having to send it back. It's real time. It's their map. It belongs to them. They can print it, share it with anybody that they need to. And so it's a great time to make sure that everything is up to date, and that they also have a plan for reaching out to have drills during the school year. I mean, that's one thing that's kind of mandated in the state now. That go ahead and setting those dates and planning, that's very important. It helps for everything to go a lot smoother.
Yeah, I think that's an important part you bring up. We've always done fire drills and severe weather drills, and now you begin to see more and more school districts on their own that were doing lockdown drills. Of course, now it's mandated. But I think that is extremely important. I know most of them involve not only their SROs, but all of their local law enforcement and emergency personnel. The last thing you want to happen is a bad battery on a badge, because no one's been testing those or looking at those. And from my memory, I think you've got on the report, I could pull up by school and I could see if some batteries were getting close to ending their battery life. Is that still how CENTEGIX works? I've been out of it for a little while now, but is that still the case, Mary Jay?
Well, the best practice is that there is somebody at the school level that monitors the admin panel on a regular basis, and that includes monitoring badges. And so we send out health reports as well. So if they get those health reports, but the biggest thing is making sure that everybody is in place, that everybody's been trained. You mentioned the training mode. It's not necessarily testing.
That's right. That's right.
It's training mode. So what it does is it sends it into a mode where the alert will not alert 911. It will not alert all the responders. But what it does is it gives you an opportunity to see what this button feels like.
That's right.
If you've never pressed the button, you may be one of those teachers where you haven't used it, but if you've never pressed it, you're not real sure what that feels like.
That's right.
And so they can do the 3-button press, they can do the 8-button press during the training mode. And another great feature about that is there's a QR code that the administrators can scan, and they scan that QR code, and every time that this button is pressed during the time that they've set up for training mode, then they see every employee that presses their badge that use the training time. So it's training to use the badge. It's not necessarily testing the system. Testing the system is a total different animal. And so, even Barrow County, when they had their tragedy, I mean, it was incredible that the day before they actually did a training session. And so those training sessions or testing sessions are very important, but the badge training mode is very important so the employees know what those badges
That's right.
feel like.
And I think you bring up a good point. I know that the teachers, the parapros, the secretaries, custodians, everybody, they get this sense of comfort or relief. Number one, having a badge of their own. Bus drivers, everyone, but being able to train, put it in the training mode, and them actually push and feel the vibration of the badge, I really do think helps them see how that works and know that they've just sent an immediate message to not only the school leaders, but also the SROs and the local law enforcement. I think that's a very important part of that testing and training.
Yeah.
Really do.
I was in a school district at the beginning of last year helping them with their staff training, and one of the things they did is they literally put the admin panel up on the screen in front of the room so that everybody could see all of their training alerts coming in. And so that's what the staff love, knowing, okay, I can do my 3-click, I can do my 8-click, and then I see it come up right there in just a couple seconds, and it just gives me that confidence. Now I really understand how this is going to work.
That's right. I know some staffs, principals, that every time they have a monthly faculty meeting, they do the training. Just because some of them, whether it's an assistant principal or their administrative assistant, they're looking at the badge health, they're keeping up with that, making sure if any badges or batteries are going bad. So I think there's some great ideas that don't take much time, but keeps it at the forefront of everyone's attention.
Well, the goal is to eliminate some of that stress that the teachers may have. And I know that when I was superintendent, my special programs teachers, I got email after email, Mr. Floyd, you just do not understand how much this has relieved some of my tension, because I do have several kids that have seizures on a regular basis, they have medical issues, and then I felt 100% responsible for those. And so now that I know that I can get help immediately, it just, really those are awesome things. And then as a superintendent, when I retired, I got 4 very personal letters, and they were from parents. And they were from parents from kids that had medical issues, thanking me for the alert system. And, one parent was, I had a hard time sending my kid to public school because I knew that he was going to have seizures and he's going to have stress. And it turned out that you guys can handle it a whole lot better than we can at home.
Wow.
And that was huge for me. But out of all the letters I could have gotten as a superintendent, that the 4 letters that I got was about Crisis Alert and CENTEGIX. I thought that was pretty awesome.
That's awesome. That is really good. Wow. Well, how else can educational leaders learn about any school safety best practices? You mentioned that that's really what y'all are about, is helping educators understand that. Maybe they're listening to this podcast, or they're watching, they're a new superintendent, maybe they're a new school safety director. You're seeing those positions pop up more and more frequent around the state. Maybe they're a new principal and they go, "Ooh, I want some more information. I didn't know about that training mode. I didn't know about being able to test for the badge help." Who can they call? Who is the point of contact for them for some specific training or information on best practices?
Well,
Jay Floyd.
No.
The best thing that they could do is send that to support. Anything that they need, if they send it to support@centegix.com, it will go to the right place. But of course, they can email me or they can call me. But it is important that they use that opportunity to send it into support, regardless of what it is. One of the things you do not want to happen is that you kind of lose your training edge along the way, because you have you've had some turnover as far as administrators go and as responders go. I always recommend that if they have new, especially administrators or principals, that they train those responders first, and then the responders can then retrain everybody that needs to be trained. But it's one of those things to where, in today's day and time, it has become a very important piece of technology for the district. And so if it's an important piece of technology, then you want to make sure that you're using it correctly, and that you have training, and that you do the badge training mode, that you work with your teachers. A lot of times you have to define what does a 3-button click mean? What are some examples of what that is as far as my district is concerned? And then what are some examples of, a campus-wide alert and locking down the building? And so you always have to keep those things at the forefront and really, in your best practices, as far as the school level is concerned, when they're having conversations about those, that's the best thing that could happen.
Yeah.
I'm having conversations about those, and,
right.
everybody kind of understands what to do, what not to do, and how to handle situations. And that's an important part of the training.
Yeah. Well, I remember one of my last jobs, superintendent, the sheriff of that county was speaking to, I can't remember if it was the chamber or Rotary or someone, and the sheriff even made the comment. He said, with the locked doors, with the external things that the school district has in place, and with CENTEGIX, he used to say, the only place safer and harder to gain access in that county was to his jail than the public schools. So I think that's important for us to remind our listeners and our stakeholders and our communities that public schools have come a long, long way as far as the safety features, and CENTEGIX plays a huge part in that. And so I think that's an important message to keep sending to our stakeholders so they do feel more comfortable about sending their kids to school.
And Ben, one of the things that we see a lot of school districts do, especially as part of the back-to-school preparation, is to do, sometimes it's called a media day or a demo day, and invite different stakeholders from the media, maybe new parents, those kinds of people who are not yet familiar with the broader view of how CENTEGIX works. Yeah. And it's a great way to just put out to all of your community, here's some of the things that we're doing to keep our schools safe. Yeah. And we really see that parents and even new teachers really appreciate that extra level of communication. So that's also on our best practice list for coming back to school.
That's a great idea for some back to school. I think about local school council meetings. I know GSBA has the Villa program. I hear of a lot of school districts that do that, but I really like the idea of inviting the media there too.
And we have a communications kit that is available on our support site if people need some guidance about how to pull one of those off. Yeah. I can tell you that what I have found in working with so many communications directors from school districts is that they are really good at their jobs. Yeah. But we are always here to support if there's any help that's needed. And if I could add in also one comment to Jay's point about training, our support site also has some great videos, training videos for different roles. And they are the kind of resource that districts can load into their own LMS and deliver it along with any other training that they may be providing to their teachers or staff as part of back to school.
That's awesome.
Fair?
Yes. Yeah. Well, you mentioned Rotary. As far as a community-wide communication, you can't do enough to let people in your community know. And you mentioned Rotary. I have actually gone to speak about 15 different Rotaries in different counties. So I am available for that if anybody would like. I've got a great Rotary
Call
program.
him up. Call Jay Floyd for speaking engagements as well.
I got a great Rotary program. It does have a few dad jokes in it, but I do have a good program to show the community. And I've always been impressed in those type meetings where the people in the community, I had no idea that our school district had this. I had no idea that we had this capability. This makes me feel so good.
That's right.
And that's the reason why I continue doing it.
Yeah, that's a great point. And for those listening or watching online to this podcast, it's probably a great reminder to make sure that as a school district in a school, as you are sharing that with your stakeholders so that they know what you've got with CENTEGIX and all the safety features and just how quick that response is, that your sheriff's office, police department gets that instant communication. Well, is there anything else as we wrap up this podcast that you would like to share for our listeners about CENTEGIX before we call it an episode?
Maybe I'll just summarize with, for our Georgia districts, the crisis alert, the panic button part of the law is all good and covered. And when it comes to mapping, our safety blueprint enables people to be in compliance, and contacting CENTEGIX to get all that set up so that you meet that deadline, that would be a key step. For those who haven't already done the part of tagging their assets and putting the room information, all those details that are required of the law, we can help get that done.
That's awesome. Good. Jay, you got anything?
Just one thing. I've always had I guess a question or a philosophy. I don't know what it is. Do you love them enough? And the bottom line is, do you love them enough that you'll do whatever it takes to make sure that everybody's safe and that everybody's taken care of? And it takes effort in all these areas to make sure that you are above, reproach as far as safety is concerned. And so that's a very important part of it. And I'm so glad that I'm part of a company that I feel like we're making a huge impact, and and I get to see people like you that are in education, and so I love that part. So reach out to CENTEGIX for any need that you have.
Absolutely. CENTEGIX is a fantastic partner of GAEL, has been for years and years. We are very appreciative of all the things that CENTEGIX does for GAEL. And I do think that it just makes school districts so much more at ease to know with this House Bill 268, if you're a CENTEGIX customer, you're covered. There's some little nuances and some details that we're getting some information still. Some of those timelines won't be until future years, but most of those aren't related to the CENTEGIX aspect. They're more about student record transfers and that kind of stuff. So I think it's just amazing of how well CENTEGIX has already met so many of the requirements of House Bill 268. So thank you listeners for watching today, another episode of GAEL Unscripted.